Hi guys, my name is Kevin. I'm one of the co-founders of PluginLab. If you are a developer or just someone who wants to create his first ChatGPT plugin, you are at the right place. So first, I will give you a quick overview of the workflow and some challenges you will face as a ChatGPT plugin developer. Then I will explain you how does ChatGPT talk with your backend, what's a manifest file, how you can track requests from ChatGPT, and finally, a quick overview of the authentication in the ChatGPT plugin world. So if you're ready, let's get started. First, it's very important to understand how it works in the usual web environment. So for example, this will be familiar to you if you are a web developer. So usually what you have, let's say you are running an API for a coffee shop, for example, that allows your users to list flavors of the coffee and then buy a coffee. So it's most likely you have a front-end application communicating with your backend, and your users are going to use this front-end, click on some buttons, for example, and send requests to your backend. Hopefully your backend will respond. So if you are a web developer, I guess it's very easy for you to understand, so I'm not going deeper than that. Now, let's see how it works if we are on the ChatGPT plugin environment. Well, we still have a backend API. However, we don't have any front end anymore. Now the user doesn't click any button on our front end. Instead, is just chatting with ChatGPT on the ChatGPT windows. And this is very different, and you'll see in this video that's going to give you some challenges to solve. So I believe you understand how it works. The user will probably say something like, hey, I would like to buy a coffee. And ChatGPT will understand the request and it will choose to use your plugin and finally send request to your API and hopefully get a response from it that matches the user needs. But now we can see at least one problem. I mean, it's most likely that the users will not have only your plugin installed on their browser. So it means at some point, ChatGPT will have to choose between your plugin, let's say plugin A here, and your competitor's plugin or any other plugin, or just no plugin at all. So the question is, how will ChatGPT choose your plugin over another one? And the answer is the manifest file. So basically, a manifest file is a JSON file that describes your plugin in general, and it helps ChatGPT understand how to use your plugin and how it could fit to some users' needs. So this file is very well explained on the ChatGPT documentation, so I'm not going to go over the details, but you'll see the most important of them. The important thing to know about the manifest file is you'll have to host it and serve it through your backend API. Actually, when you'll submit your plugin to ChatGPT, ChatGPT will ask you the domain of your API, and it will expect from you to expose a file, a route named wellknown/ai-plugin.json. And this file, this route, should lead to your manifest file. So if you don't do it, your plugin will never work. This is very important to know, and you also see that you have some constraints to respect, but we'll cover that more in detail in another video. Now we've solved our problem. We know how to explain ChatGPT what will our plugin do, so he could use it if he wants. Now, the problem is we have to describe our API, because how does he know that he has to call the list flavor endpoint rather than the buy coffee endpoint? He can't know that except if you give him a specification file. So that's exactly what you'll have to do. Actually, if you look at the manifest file, you'll see an API section here. And in this section, you'll have to give an URL to your open API specification. So if you don't know what an open API specification is, I suggest you to go on the internet and have a look at it. It's a common way to describe APIs, basically. So the difference between the manifest file and the open API spec is that the open API spec is focused on how does your API work, where the manifest file is in more general intended to describe your plugin. So you'll have also to serve and to give a route to your OpenAPI.yaml file. So, okay, another problem solved. That's really cool. So now, something very important to note compared to the classical web version of a web application is that you don't have any control on your front end. I mean, sometimes ChatGPT will choose to use your backend or not. Sometimes it will use to use one endpoint or the other one. And sometimes it will probably try some parameters which are not expected. You'll have to check that, and at some point you'll probably have to play with ChatGPT and tweak your OpenAPI spec to be sure it fits the way ChatGPT understands it. And you have to tweak it around. This is very important. However, since your OpenAPI spec will be on your server, on your backend, you'll have to redeploy your specification file every time you want to apply a change. So this kind of problems can be solved in 5 minutes using PluginLab.ai. Actually, this is the best and first tool on the market to help you create some ChatGPT plugins in a snap. By installing PluginLab, we will act as a proxy layer between ChatGPT and your backend. It means we'll be able to track everything that's going on in between and provide your backend some superpower, to manage your plugin and do some changes. And we'll go over that. So first, PluginLab will help you to create your manifest file and your OpenAPI specification. This will be very helpful. Then it will also help you to validate them, because you'll see that the manifest file especially has many constraints and requirements from OpenAI. All those requirements are explained in the OpenAI documentation, but we handle that for you. So it's easier and you can, focus on what's important for you as a plugin creator. The second thing is we'll host them, and so we'll provide versioning. You will be able to switch from one version to the other one in a snap, and you'll not have to redeploy your backend because ChatGPT will use our specification file. It'll be just so much easier for you guys. This is very nice because you'll be able to tweak your plugin and see real-time responses. But you can't improve what you can't measure. So that's why PluginLab helps you to go beyond that. By acting as a proxy layer, I told you we can provide much more value, especially regarding the tracking. PluginLab will automatically give you a dashboard with all the real-time events going from ChatGPT to your backend, which means you don't have to set up any complex monitoring stack. Everything is included in 5 minutes. So you can go on your dashboard and you'll be able to see what endpoints have been called by OpenAI, and you'll see the duration, the status, is it a success, a failure. You'll see the request body and parameters sent by ChatGPT, which is very helpful to debug, and you'll see the location of the users and much more values like that are very helpful for you as a developer. And by default, PluginLab will only accept the request made from the OpenAI IP addresses, which means you will be able to whitelist some IPs if you want, but you will not be polluted by some other events. So you don't have to think about it. We'll handle that for you. Now let's have a look to the authentication. So you have multiple modes of authentication, and the first one is no authentication at all. So obviously this is the most basic one. We don't advise you to use it because, anyone will be able to send requests to your backend through ChatGPT. You'll not have any control on it, and except if you are a public website or something, you probably don't want that. So yeah, keep in mind that exists. The second mode is service level. This time you'll not be able to identify your users, but instead you'll be able to identify ChatGPT. So basically you'll provide a kind of API key to ChatGPT, which is secret. And every time ChatGPT does a request to your API, it will use this secret. So you'll be able to know that ChatGPT is actually talking to your backend and it's not, someone malicious. The third mode will be user level. So here we'll start identifying the user. So basically, your users will have an access token. For example, you could give them this access token, which could be a lifetime access token on your website, and they will copy that. And when they will install the plugin, ChatGPT will ask them for the access token. Could be an API key or whatever you call it. And once the user gave it to ChatGPT, it's stored, and then ChatGPT will always send this access token to your API. So you'll be able to know which user did what requests. And obviously, if you have PluginLab in between, will secure everything and transfer everything in a secured way to your API. So the last scenario and the most complex one is to authenticate the user, but with an auth flow. So I'm not going to dig deeper in the detail because authentication flow is very well explained on internet and on the documentation. I will also probably record a new video especially for that. So this is not really important to understand the whole flow. The thing is, in this flow, the users will have to follow the OAuth authentication flow through ChatGPT and your backend. So you have some logic to handle. And then they will have an access token, and this access token will be added to the user's request for you to track them. So this is not very complex, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to set up because as a plugin creator, if you want to launch fast, you probably don't have time to spend on this kind of stuff. The idea here is not to make a choice, but obviously you'll have some general information about the different possibilities, and you'll be able to make your choice later as you gather more information. Maybe in my next videos or directly in the OpenAI documentation. So now we've seen this, you have to keep in mind some other challenges you will face. So basically, what we've seen is you don't have any control anymore on your front end since ChatGPT replaces your front end. So you don't know when it will call your backend. You don't know with what parameters, you don't know what endpoints is going to trigger. So you have to play with it and you have to understand things. But here come other challenges. You'll probably have to manage users, permissions, or payments at some point. And you have to keep that in mind when you start developing your plugin. At the moment I'm recording this video, this is probably not a big problem because, it's still in limited alpha, so you have private users. Your plugins are not public. But as soon as your plugins will be public, you will not have any control and you have to create some better system to limit your users, the quotas, and everything. So keep that in mind. The good news is if you're using PluginLab as a proxy layer between ChatGPT and your backend, you'll have some unfair advantages. You'll also be able to manage quotas, rate limiting, permissions, and very soon payment and more through your dashboard. At the moment I'm recording this video, PluginLab is not really suited for big companies. So if you already have an infrastructure, it's most likely that managing users, quotas, limitings, and all those stuff is something you already know how to do. However, if you are a developer who want to start a new project very quickly, if you are a startup, you probably want to go fast, and PluginLab is the right solution for that. I hope it has been helpful for you guys. As an outro, I would like to tell you once more, please go and check the OpenAI documentation, because if you want to create some plugins, obviously I will create new videos and we will create more and more content to make your life easier. But having a look to the OpenAI documentation is a good idea. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. It will be helpful and I will probably respond in my next videos. If you want to get more info, you can go to PluginLab.ai. I will also attach the link to our Discord on the description below, because we are building that with the community. So if you want to reach out and help us to build the best product to create ChatGPT plugin in a snap, feel free to join the Discord. It will be a pleasure to work with you guys. Now, you know mostly everything, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.